Now, what you're hearing from the mainstream press is that 3 people committed suicide because of this one website, because of Kiwi Farms. Now, if that were true, out of 8 million visitors per month, if 3 people really had committed suicide, you tell me whether or not that would be a solid rationale for forcing that website out of business, forcing it to shut down.
Clara Sorrenti says a false email with her address was sent to London City Council claiming she had killed her mother and was intending to shoot people at City Hall who were straight. The email, Sorrenti says, had given out her real address and resulted in police with guns at her doorstep and her being arrested.
If this had happened on Twitter, would you be saying Twitter should cease to exist? If this had happened on Reddit, would you be saying Reddit should cease to exist? If it had happened here on YouTube, would you be arguing that the entire website, YouTube, should cease to exist? If it had happened in a newspaper, should one newspaper, should they all cease to exist? Should the company that chops down the trees and turns them into pulp and paper refuse to provide the raw materials so that the newspaper can exist? In the same way that there's this strange conspiracy to refuse to provide the raw materials so that Kiwi Farms can exist. And if so, why? And if not, what is it that you're willing to assume makes this one website so different, so pernicious, so special?
If you've been following the saga of Kiwi Farms, hey, some good news coming. Actually, in multiple waves. First of all, Cloudflare finally described as under pressure. I would say under a sustained campaign that had to go on for way too long with way more support than should have been necessary. But Cloudflare did drop Kiwi Farms, so that's good news. And then there was immediate follow-up to that. Within 24 hours of the site moving to Russian servers, apparently it's been booted from that too.
Right-wing bigots found the hotel room where she's been staying, and they doxed the information about the hotel room.
Kiwi Farms, as it is today, pulls around 8 million fucking visits a month, according to similarweb.com. Not sure how accurate that is, but even if it's not 8 million, that's still a good ballpark range.
I think what upsets so many people is that Kiwi Farms actually has evidence to back up a lot of what they say about people. It's not just a bunch of people talking out of their ass. There's some of that on there, but the major threads on people have a lot of archived dirt against the people they're talking about. And so, when you search for someone who's featured on the site, Kiwi Farms oftentimes will pop up. Some of the people that they're talking about are influential, and they're not happy that there's a decentralized website that can say whatever they want about them. And so, any internet security provider that is willing to host their site right now is being targeted by mobs of insane people because they're mad that they're on there with documentation of their antics.
A web of hate. Kiwi Farms, that's an online forum that prides itself on free speech, which includes a lot of pure bigotry and harassment. Kiwi Farms has been dropped by its internet services company after being linked to violent threats.
I know what you're thinking. You imagine I'd feel differently about this if it had happened to me. Well, guess what? Worse has happened to me. And I had to raise about $10,000 in donations in total for a court case that's still ongoing to this day in Thailand because of defamation and harassment and threats of violence on the internet directed at me about 6 years ago.
Basically, Durian Ryder said that Hazel à-bas-le-ciel is a sexual predator without having any proof. Also, he threatened à-bas-le-ciel. For me, it's pretty obvious that this is wrong. What Durian Ryder did is wrong. It's just wrong. You can really ruin that person's life. But still, I saw many vegans doing videos and saying, Yeah, but Dorian Ryder is a very good person. Freddy, for example.
I know what it's like for social media to really seriously, negatively impact your life. And you know what? It didn't happen on Kiwi Farms. It happened on YouTube, it happened on Reddit, it happened on all kinds of websites all over the internet, Twitter, you name it. But I didn't respond to that challenge by holding YouTube responsible and thinking that YouTube shouldn't exist. I didn't respond to that by thinking Twitter shouldn't exist or Reddit shouldn't exist. I held the particular people legally responsible. And again, that's why I have an ongoing court case still to this day.
There are many hosting companies like these. You just need to know what to look for. The problem is when you have people who want to shut you down, they go to Cloudflare, or they go to, if you're not hosted behind Cloudflare, they go to your IP. They look up who owns your IP. It's a guy. He owns a company. They go after the guy. They say, if you don't take this site down, I'm going to go after you. I'm going to go after your wife. I'm going to go after your mother and your father. I'm going to call them pedophiles. I'm going to ring them up in the middle of the night and ask why they host a child pornography website, why they host a cyberbullying website. And you fucking bet that they take that shit down.
And so, any internet security provider that is willing to host their site right now is being targeted by mobs of insane people because they're mad that they're on there with documentation of their antics. So these crazy people aren't able to just go back and sweep the dirt under the rug. Some people will say the internet is forever, but clearly it's not. Look how hard of a time Kiwi Farms is having just keeping their site up.
As 2017 rolled around, Vordrak decided to switch up tactics. He gathered people who hated Null, labeled the Autistic Legion of Doom, and then decided to go after his mom and family. A few days later, his mom literally got actually fired from her job, and Null immediately took down the site. Vordrak is one in like a million people that have tried to actually shut down the forums, and it would be impossible to cover every single one of them. However, I think he sets a good benchmark as to how far these people will go.
Now, what you're hearing from the mainstream press is that 3 people committed suicide because of this one website, because of Kiwi Farms. Now, if that were true, out of 8 million visitors per month, if 3 people really had committed suicide, you tell me whether or not that would be a solid rationale for forcing that website out of business, forcing it to shut down. How many people have committed suicide because of Instagram? How many people have committed suicide because of Facebook, YouTube, MySpace? How many people have committed suicide because of the New York Times or Cosmopolitan magazine? I'm willing to wager it's more than 3, and I'm not digressing to get into the details of those 3 cases, each and every one of which falls apart after about 5 minutes of investigation. This is a guy you may have heard of before, Machiavelli, but this is the real Machiavelli, not the author of The Prince, kind of a cheap, lightweight book that's sold in a lot of airport lobbies. The real Machiavelli is in a longer, harder to understand book called The Discourses on Livy. The moral to the story of this book is that if you do not have millions of people willing to stand up and fight and die for the future of democracy, pretty soon you're going to have no democracy at all. And that really is part of the meaning of the term Machiavellian.